Welcome to At CCLI. I'm Paul Herman, and today I'm not actually at CCLI. I'm here in Porte, Indiana, with my friends Jennie and Darrin Riddle here at the People and Songs headquarters. Jennie and Darrin, thanks so much for inviting me.
Paul, it's great to have you
Thanks
here.
for having us.
It's amazing to be here. It's amazing to be here. And I can't wait to hear the story about how God led you here to this place. But first, I want to hear your story. Most people only know you as the author of Revelation Song. Fill us in. Tell us your story.
Well, I did write that song, but first, I'm the wife of this man here. This is Darrin, and we met in 1986?
86, yeah.
Close enough.
In
Yeah.
Beaumont, Texas.
Yeah.
And we have 4 children. Our oldest is actually 27 today. Daniel. And our baby is Andrew. He's turned 18 and is on his way to China soon on a trip. And then we have two in the middle.
kids in
David
between.
is 24 and Emily is 25. I guess that's right. Yeah, it all blends together, so it gets hard. They grow really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we've been married 28 years.
Wow.
So married in November of 88.
You recently wrote a song, I Got Saved.
I did.
How did God save you?
I was 20 years old, and I remember vividly saying to myself and to the Lord, I guess, I didn't think He was listening to me in those days, and so I would talk to the sky, wishing He heard me. I really had ruined my life to such a degree that I thought it was irreparable and that God hated me. I really believed that. I was chief sinner. I am, by God's grace, alive. I did so many things that should have me dead by now. I've tasted all that the world has to offer and took every bit of the enemy's bait, and it all leads to death. And at age 20, I remember saying, I am too old to be this young and too young to be this old.
Wow.
And I was so done. And I met Darrin, and he was sort of maybe kind of at the same kind of place, but the Lord used him. He was the first person I loved other than myself enough to begin to desire to see my life turned around and changed. And even though neither one of us were serving the Lord, I was certainly not born again. We began pulling each other up, I would say. And it was his sister, actually, that led me to Jesus on January 5th, 1988. And
Darrin, what was your perspective of the story?
Well, it was really the same sister that invited me to a rock concert. I was living a very, I would say, godless, very selfish life, but I loved rock music. And she said, "Oh, there's this band at Portland State. You got to come hear them. You're going to love them. They're rock and roll." I was like, "They rock?" She said, "Oh, yeah, they're rock and roll." So I was radically saved at a Petra concert. That kind of dates myself, I know.
Yes.
A great guy named Randy Stonehill opened for them.
Wow.
And so along with 50,000 other worshipers, I just got swept away. Yeah, and I got saved that day.
Wow.
the first Christian song I ever knew, Darrin taught me. It was "Shut the Door, Keep Out the Door."
By Randy Stonehill.
Have you talked to Randy? Have you told him that?
No.
No.
You need
But
to.
I guess you can.
Yes.
I'd love to meet him.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, tell me how you met, and tell me your story.
Well, I've always been a little adventurous at times. I had graduated high school, moved to Oregon, was putting myself through school. I worked several jobs, actually 3 to be specific, and 2 years into it, I was extremely tired, and really needed to take a break. I'm leaving out a lot of details, by the way. So I pretty much quit everything. Told my roommates I was leaving, had really no idea where I was going to go, but I just knew I needed to get away and to take a break. It was summertime, 1986, and I headed to California, slept on the beaches all the way down to California. And in Oceanside, California, was at a Burger King and was eating a burger. And I looked across the restaurant and I saw a friend of mine that I went to high school with. Now, he was 2 years older than me, and he had finished college, or finished high school, and finished college, and was on his way to graduate school at a place in Beaumont, Texas, called Lamar University. And I thought for sure, thousands of miles away from where I was, that was not him, but it was him.
Mm-hmm.
And I went over and talked to him, and he said, well, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I don't know, what are you doing? He was like, well, I'm on my way to Texas. I'm going to graduate school. I said, what a coincidence. I'm going that way too. Of course, I wasn't.
Right.
I was just looking for something to do.
Uh-huh.
So he extended an invitation, and together we traveled to Beaumont, Texas, where I met Jennie, who was attending Lamar University. She was in the music program there. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how we met.
He did leave out a few details. Did you mention that you were in sales?
I was in sales. The 3 jobs that I held, 2 of them were legal, 1 of them was very illegal. So the trouble that I didn't mention was around the job that was illegal.
Yeah.
So that's
We get the drift.
that's my story.
And I met him in college. He worked at the
In
corporation
sales again.
across the street from my house.
Called the Southland Corporation,
Mm-hmm.
or most people know as
7-Eleven.
7-Eleven.
Yes.
And he wooed me with big gulps.
If I recall, it was popcorn and big gulps.
And I had need of his sales back then.
Uh-huh.
And so that was our beginning.
Yeah.
And we were both a disaster.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Lord
Just spun us together.
spun us together, and
we collided.
we picked each other back up.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
We were both kids. I mean, I was 20, he was 21. And I'll never forget him. We had started dating. We went very, very quickly. We both dove in headlong. And like I said, I had never loved anybody more than myself until that point.
Mm-hmm.
And he came one day and said that he was leaving, and he had joined the military. And I was devastated. I couldn't figure out, he was leaving? And I broke up with him immediately. And I've learned about myself, that's the way I deal with the potential of rejection. I'll run.
Yeah.
Before anybody has a chance to hurt me, I'll run. And over time, the Lord's had to deal with me there. But it hurt, and I ran. And I'll never forget, a friend of mine, Casey was his name, said, what are you doing, Jennie? It's the first time I've ever seen you think of anybody except yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing? And I said, he's leaving. He's leaving in 3 months. And he said, go enjoy the next 3 months then. So came back, and we enjoyed the next 3 months thoroughly. I was convinced I would never see him again when he left.
Mm-hmm.
Convinced. And so I was so shocked and surprised when he did continue to call while in the military, and invited me home to meet his family for Christmas. And I will never forget going home that year to my house, to my parents' house for Christmas, and I was supposed to go to him on January 4th is what it was. On January 4th I was supposed to go to him in Oregon and meet his folks. But I'd gone to my folks for Christmas, and I got food poisoning, the worst case of food poisoning ever. And I was convinced that I wasn't going to get to go. I couldn't function. And my parents, they weren't going to take me all the way 7 hours to jump on a plane to meet some guy they didn't want me to hang out with. Back then he had an earring and hair, and that was a little crazy back then.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I prayed for the second time. The first time I'd prayed, I was, like I said, just a disastrous mess. I had ruined my life through drugs and alcohol. I had had an abortion, murdered my baby, and was experiencing the vortex of grief and despair, and what felt like for the first time in my life, the absence of God.
Mm.
and I was convinced God hated me. First time I prayed was on an acid trip when my friend got so sick, and I thought she was going to die. And I told God, I know you don't want to hear from me. I know you hate me, but this isn't about me. It's about my friend. And if you'll get her through the night, I promise I will serve you, even if you never talk to me again. And he did get me through that night. And somehow he did give me grace to keep my promise. And I told him if he had gotten me through the night that I would never do drugs again, even if he never talked to me again. The Lord rushed in like a flood. He took me at my word, and he held me. I could sense it. He held me to the standard. You will not do drugs again. And I didn't. I didn't. And so I began to go to church sober. Why was I going to church? Because I was the worship leader for a church in Beaumont, Texas. They didn't call them worship leaders back then, but that's what it was. Mm-hmm. My job was to lead the congregational singing, direct the choir, teach them specials, and sing a special every week myself, and work with the pastor to pick out the sets and design the sermons. Mm-hmm. I was unsaved completely, and I would show up on Sunday mornings completely, thoroughly hungover.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And I would chuckle and laugh about the whole thing. Mm-hmm. Again, convinced that the Lord hated me, so it was ironic to me that was one of my jobs.
Mm-hmm. So it was your job, but it wasn't real to you at all.
No, but I wanted it to be. My voice teacher at the time, I was also singing big band music all over town, and my voice teacher told me one day, I think the Lord had me around all these believers that could see right through me, and I didn't know it.
They were praying for you.
I think so.
So they knew it all along.
I think so.
They just loved you through it.
Yeah.
I wish I could talk to her now and find out. Maybe I should try to. But she said, Jennie, you don't know any of your songs. And I said, what do you mean? I know all of my songs. I know the words to all of them. I know them. I'd sing them every night. And she said, no, you don't know any of them. You've never lived them. You have no idea what you're singing. Mm-hmm. You have zero idea what you're singing.
Wow.
She said, from now on, here's your assignment. You may not sing one thing that you do not mean. Mm-hmm. And so I took it very seriously because I am a rule follower, massive rule breaker, but also a rule follower. Mm-hmm. And I began immediately on the journey trying to find something I could honestly sing on Sunday morning. And I realized, I realized I didn't know the songs, like she said. Mm-hmm. I had no idea what most of the hymns even meant. I'd been raised Catholic and by a very devout family who loved God, mm-hmm. but I hadn't paid attention. And so the only thing I could find was, turn me not away, receive me though unworthy. Turn me not away. And open my eyes, Lord. I want to see Jesus, to reach out and touch him and tell him I love him. And I meant that with all of my heart. And so I began to pray again through song. And I would weep trying to put that together. I wanted the Lord, but I thought he hated me.
Mm-hmm. What was the breakthrough that finally showed you that he loved you?
That night, that my friend, I thought she was going to die on that acid trip. And the Lord heard me, even though I wasn't asking for me. Mm-hmm. The Lord heard me.
Yeah.
He preserved her. He took me up on my word. And I stopped doing drugs immediately. And I began listening on Sunday mornings. And something began stirring in me. And Darrin moved away. And he invited me to come for Christmas, or for New Year's. Second time I prayed, I was at my parents' house. I had food poisoning. And I said, Lord, I know you don't want to hear from me. You answered me last time. And this time I'm asking for me. I want to get to Oregon. I really want to get to Oregon. And I asked him to heal me. And he did in a moment. And I got up and I drove to Beaumont from Uvalde, Texas. And I got on the plane just in time, and I met my man at the airport and his mom and his family. And that night, he asked me to marry him, And the next day we went to his sister's house. I remember him telling me, Jennie, we're going to meet my sister. Shannon Banky is her name. They're fanatical. They're crazy religious. And, excuse me, you can't cuss. You can't smoke around them. You can't drink. You can't do any of those things. And I said, I work at a church. I've got this. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And he brought me to her house. And I remember her opening the door. And I was naked as naked could be. She saw right through me.
Mm.
There was no hiding anything. She saw it all. And I was loved. There was no judgment cast. She welcomed me. She loved me. And her first words to me were, so you're who my brother's going to marry. You're who I've been praying for all these years.
Wow.
And that we didn't have cell phones then. And so I said, how'd you know we were getting married? She goes, well, you're her. You're who I've been praying for all this time.
Mm.
And so that day, I don't know where you went still. You were working on a car or doing something.
Yeah, I think I had to.
I don't know.
Repair something.
He disappeared, wisely. I don't know. Because he left me alone with her. And she talked about Jesus like she knew him. He wasn't hanging on a cross in the sanctuary. He wasn't only found in the Mass. He wasn't in the hymn book. He wasn't in the tradition and the religion. He was in that house. He was right there with her.
Mm.
He was there. I could feel him. And I remember her asking me if I wanted to go to the store with them. And something in me had kind of hit its wall. And I said, no, I'm going to stay here. I'll just watch TV. And she said that they don't own a TV. And I said, oh, is it broken? And I was thinking, I'll buy them a new TV. They've been very nice to me. And she says, no, we don't believe in TV. And at that point, I thought she had grown a third eyeball. I'm like, what? And she said they didn't watch TV. And she said, but she knew how to entertain me. She said, you look like a really smart girl. No one had ever said that. I was dumb as bricks. And she said, you look like a smart girl. I have something just for you. And she came out with this giant Harry Potter looking book. Mm-hmm. Leather bound big thing.
Yeah.
Stuck it right in front of me. Poof. And she said, this book right here has everything about anything you want to know about life, right here in this
It's in
book.
there.
Right here. It was a concordance. And she said, but it goes with this book. And she put a little Bible next to it.
Yeah.
And she taught me how to work it real fast. You look up this word and you find it here. And so she left, and I was really intrigued about this book that knew everything. And so by the time she had got back, I had been doing nothing but studying everything I could think of.
Wow.
And by the time she got back, I wanted to know so much about this Jesus that apparently had mercy and was able to forgive everything.
Mm.
And that night, somehow, I don't remember saying a sinner's prayer. I don't remember anything like that. But my life was changed that night. I met Jesus all the way.
Mm.
And he came in and he said, the car wasn't working. Something like the car, I can't remember what it was. The car wasn't working. And he said that we had two choices. We could either call his mom and she could come get us, or we could stay there. Shannon volunteered. We could stay there. And I suddenly remember, well, it was as clear as a bell. Something happened. I heard this voice that was speaking in my voice that sounded just like me in my thoughts. And it said, oh my gosh, I can't stay here. If I stay here, she's going to talk to me the whole time about God. I've got to get out of here. You know, you've always heard that the enemy overplays his hand. He did, because he made me aware when I realized I don't feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? Because that's actually not how I feel. Everything in me actually wants to stay here. And then I heard the voice of the Lord as clear as a bell, and I'll never forget it. He said, if you stay, Jennie, you have new life. If you go, you will surely die.
Mm.
And it was no contest. I stayed, and I've had life since. I was delivered of all of my addictions. sans one, I still smoked weed like a furnace because I kept thinking in the Bible it's all natural and God gave us every herb-bearing seed in every plant. And so that took a little longer to get over, but within a month, I'd say that was broken off of me as well.
Wow.
And within 6 weeks, the Lord had so revolutionized and changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
I moved to Alaska to be with him. He was going to be stationed there in the military, and took a job as a nanny and went immediately into a Christ for the Nations church plant where they discipled me.
In Alaska.
In Alaska.
Yeah.
It was a little tiny church plant. David and Debbie Lowry were my pastors. They discipled us and took care of us. And to this day say that the reason the Lord started that church was for us. It never really grew beyond us.
Wow.
But 8 months later, we put our wedding on hold because we needed to grow up in the Lord. And 8 months later, we got married in November 1988.
1988.
So it's been how long now?
We just celebrated 28 years.
Wow.
And he got saved at the Petra concert, but tell him what happened while you're in boot camp.
Yeah, just
I want my coffee back.
really began to meet some really phenomenal people. The job I had at the time was a bit rough. It was airborne infantry, so it was kind of flying towards the Arctic, jumping in, trying to survive for a couple weeks and get extracted out. Very intense,
Yeah.
both mentally and physically challenging. But I started to meet these chaplains and these guys that were with us. I mean, they jumped with us and they were there. Just phenomenal men of God that really started to sow into us, and I just soaked it up. Chaplain Garrison was one of those guys, and he's still leading men today in the Army.
Wow.
So yeah.
So I watched his life change right before my eyes as well. And by the time we married, we were both brand new people.
Wow. When did you start writing songs?
Oh, as young as I can remember, I've been making up songs. You know, I'd walk around the house just singing stuff. And so,
then when did you start writing Jesus songs?
oh, the minute I got saved. Not as a means to write songs. That's never been the motive.
Yeah.
I didn't sit down and write songs because I wanted to be a songwriter. I only and simply wrote. It was cathartic, and really my memorization tool. Those two things.
It's your journal.
You know, and also from my grandmother, my nanny. She loved my music so much, and she was always just such a supporter. But I would write songs to journal everything in life and kind of encapsulate seasons with a song, bookmark it. But my memorization tool, my primary memorization tool, was always music. So when I got saved, I would take scriptures that I wanted to memorize, and I'd immediately put a melody to them. So that's how I memorized the word. Tons and tons and tons of entire passages memorized with melody. That's the power of melody. And that's still what drives me today, honestly, in my songwriting, knowing that meter, rhyme, and melody, you'll never forget what content's there. So I'm so purposeful to try to use it to arm you in a discipleship way to walk this life with the Lord.
Yeah. So in writing all those songs, did the impact of Revelation song surprise you?
Yes, completely, and no. I was very used to writing songs. I would write every single day. During my kids' nap time was my me time, and we were so broke for so long. And we've been rich, we've been poor, we've been rich, we've been poor. We've learned that God is God, He is sovereign, and I love Mother Teresa. She always said, I don't care if I live in a cardboard box or a mansion as long as I didn't put myself there. And that has been kind of our motto. But in this particular season, we were broke. And so my daily songwriting was what I would use to give presents to people. So instead of a Hallmark, I'd write them a goofy song or a serious song or a gushy song, whatever the case may be. Something I felt like they needed. And I would always give them their songs. And so on this particular day, I remember writing it the same way I wrote everything else, except this time I wrote it with the church in mind. It wasn't my first time to write for the church. It's just this was on my mind that day. And I wanted to write a song that didn't have us in it. I was so sick of me and really wanted my focus purely on the only one who could solve anything. And I was tired of the songs that drew my focus back to me. I don't need to look at me even for one more second. And so wrote Rev's song that day. It took 3 hours like normal, but also it took 10 years because it was the backdrop of my life with the kids and this particular song by Garrett Gustafson called I Hear Angels that I used to always sing to the children as their lullaby. And I loved that song, and I always thought to myself, he says, I see men from every nation bowing down before the throne. And I really wanted to see that. I still want to see that. Still want to see that. And that was the prayer that day, to see him, nothing else. And the Lord and I wrote that song. Originally had 5 verses.
Yeah.
And I know you can't have a song with 5 verses. So the Lord and I condensed it down to 1, the 2 verses down into 1, so it became 4 verses. And then eventually I scratched that 4th weaker verse. And so very few people have heard that. And as I was writing the song, I had this image in my head, it flashed in my head, of missionaries with their people that they were preaching to across the seas, singing this song out campfire style. And I felt like the Holy Spirit said, I'm going to take this across the world. And I thought to myself, that is amazing. I was so honored to know that people in another land would sing this song. Had no idea that he meant something far beyond what my understanding was. He's always told me I think too small.
Besides Revelation song, what are some of your other favorites that you've written?
That you know? Or I mean like that are available? Most of my favorite songs nobody's ever even heard before. Except me and co-writers and my little sphere of influence. But that's out there that people know or have the opportunity to know. I love this one that Dustin Smith and I wrote at my house in Texas called The One That Really Matters. Michael W. Smith cut it. That was such an honor. And he had Carrie Job come up and sing it. So I love Carrie. Carrie's been such a catalyst for everything that we're living right now. And I just am so grateful that she was gracious enough to serve this way. I just pray so many blessings on her. But that is another song of mine she sang, The One That Really Matters. And then, and Michael, my God, he's such a father to all of us in the worship movement, even though we're practically the same age. He helped raise us. Another one that I love so much, Shane and Shane recently cut. I got to write this with Josiah Warnaking from 16 Cities and Josh Miller, along with Shane Bernard. It's called Psalm 46, Lord of Hosts, and it's on their new Psalms 2 record. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. It might be one of my very, very all-time favorites. Another one, Brandon Collins and I wrote, it's called I Stand Before Almighty God Alone. I love that song. Song with Charity Gale, Divine Exchange, love. Crystal Yates, When Love Was Slain. There's a lot of them I really fun. Phillips, Craig, and Dean, they cut When the Stars Burn Down. I do love that one. Hope of the Broken World that Selah cut. And More and More of You, wrote that with Jonathan Lee. So anyway, there's a lot of I enjoy.
Wow. And then with all these songs come all these songwriters and co-writers. I know how much they mean to you as well. I mean, talk to us about your community and why you love it so much.
I can't stand to see treasure just sitting there with nobody noticing it. I think in a nutshell, that's kind of characteristic of me, period. If I find treasure, I feel like everybody should know. And so I found treasure in all of these precious souls who love the Lord and are tirelessly serving the community and have, and a lot of times maybe even been misunderstood because there's not a lot of gain in music if you're not chasing music for music's sake.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, for those who do chase it for music's sake, there's not a lot of gain.
Yeah.
And so families and friends don't always understand a musician, an artist, a songwriter's compulsion
Mm-hmm.
and passion. And very type A analytical types will actually see it as a waste of time sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the only professions, in my opinion, that's like that. A parent never dogs a kid for wanting to be a doctor or an accountant or a librarian, I mean. So why would it terrify parents to have their child want to be a musician?
Mm-hmm.
Because they know it's a crapshoot.
Yeah.
But it's not if you know the Lord. Here's the thing, and I tell this to people in songs all the time. The Lord is your provider, period. And it's up to him to choose by what method he's going to provide.
Mm-hmm.
So just because we write songs doesn't mean the song itself needs to be our return.
Yeah.
I don't believe that that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
I work for the King, I do my assignment, and he takes care of us however he chooses to take care of us.
Mm-hmm.
And so these ones that I love so much oftentimes have felt like they don't have the right to invest themselves in their music,
Mm-hmm.
or that they need to go do something else because it's not yielding fruit that they can see.
Yeah.
And I just don't believe that. And so with all of my heart, I've really tried to encourage and support and gather and build platform for
Mm-hmm.
and cover and send. And my gracious sweetheart here has allowed me to spend my life and time there. And I don't know what I'd do if I didn't do that. I'd do that as naturally as I breathe.
Yeah.
And it's not just music I do that with. It's people. Anytime I find talented souls of any kind,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I tend to promote them. If I love them and I see value in them, even if I don't have anything for them to do, I'll create it
Mm-hmm.
just so they can do it. And it's
Yeah,
true, right?
That is very true. Very
Wow.
true. Well, what's cool is, I mean, we just love the people. They're great people just by
Mhm.
themselves.
They're
and
so amazing.
Their art is amazing. They're super creative, and I mean, I'm a fan of each one of them. I mean,
Yeah.
I so enjoy
Such a fan
just
of
sitting
them.
down and listening to all their
Yeah.
music. They're great.
And I think that probably naturally leads us to the story of this house, and how God led you here. So tell us about that.
Why don't you start with our little house, Bruce and Kathy's house,
Yeah.
and our first guest you invited home?
Okay. So we've always been given to hospitality.
That's the first thing the Lord spoke to me when I got saved. Be
Yeah.
given to hospitality. As I was
Yeah.
reading through the Bible, that was one of
Yeah.
those very first scriptures,
Hmm.
and it was like a beacon light.
From the
off.
concordance?
That was one of my eyes fell on the Bible. Be given to hospitality,
Wow.
and I'd watched my parents always be
Mhm.
given to hospitality,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always. It wasn't that it was a command that I was supposed to obey. It was validation. It was the Lord saying, "See the gift I've given you," because I've been dragging people home my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
You can ask my folks.
Yeah.
I drug an entire family of Iranians home once. So I've drug people home my lifetime. So insert Darrin into 1992.
It would have been 92. We exited the military. I went back to school. So I was at a community college in Oregon, Salem, Oregon, Chemeketa to be
Okay.
exact. And I was this is going to be a little strange, but I was in the middle of a calculus test, and I thought I was going to be in secondary education. So I was taking a lot of ed courses, and thought I was going to teach math.
Mm-hmm.
So I was in the middle of a calculus test, and I always sat in the back row, and the Lord spoke to me, and he said, look around the classroom. And it was full. It was probably 30, 40 kids in there. So I put my pencil down, kind of looked up and looked around. He said, "What do you see?" And I said, "Wow, Asians. I see a lot of Asians." And he said, "Get to know them." So I thought that was a little odd, a little strange, and I was like, I don't speak the language, or how am I going to get to know them? And it was pretty easy. You just walk up to them and say hi. So I started to engage these kids and meet them. The first kid that I met, it broke my heart. He said that he was going home, and he had been here for 2 years and had not met one American, hadn't set foot in one American home, and that just disturbed me. So I called Jennie and I said, and we had how big was the house?
450, 500
maybe
square
500
feet.
square feet at the most.
It was so tiny. It was a
Yeah.
little bitty cabin.
And so we had Daniel, and I think, did we have Emily?
Well, Daniel was a year and a half when we moved there.
Okay.
Emily, I was pregnant with Emily.
Yeah. So you're pregnant with Emily.
And by that time, we probably had Emily by that time.
Yeah, so I think, we had 2 little kids, 500 square foot,
Yeah.
a little home, and I called Jennie. I was like, I don't know how this is going to work, but I'm going to start bringing these kids home. And so that's
I've
how it
never
started.
thought about this, but how did you call me? We didn't have cell phones.
35 cents at a payphone.
Is that real?
Yeah,
So he called. I remember
Yeah.
getting a call from him,
And
and
I
he
said, I don't-
warned me.
Yeah.
yeah.
He said, "I'm bringing somebody home now."
So I just started bringing them home, holidays and every chance that I could, because I thought it wasn't right that these kids were, and they're sharp kids, right? They're coming from other countries.
So neglected.
Yeah, and what we discovered was the reason there were so many, and they're mostly Japanese. There was a TV show being aired in Japan about Oregon or the Oregon coast. So all these kids wanted to come to Oregon, so there was this huge influx. And I thought, well, great, I could be an international missionary right here on my own soil.
So we
just
shared
started-
everything we had. We just
Yeah.
blew the place out with just so many people constantly. And
yeah, we just made way in our little 500 square foot home.
So that's where it started.
that's where it
That's where it
started. And
started.
from there, we outgrew the place completely. And the Lord gave us a vision for.
Did we share that we got kicked out?
We got kicked out. We did.
We got too large for the
We
500
got too
square
large,
foot.
and they loved us. They're our dear friends, but they're like, "You've got to go get a bigger house." So we told the Lord, "We've got to get a bigger house," and He filled my eyes with something. And here was the something. I thought, if I had a big enough house, I could move our friends in and help take care of them because they don't have parents here, and I had been asked to host even more, and so I got vision for a big place, but we had no money. And we took a risk on God. We believed He was leading us to it. And we rented a 5-bedroom house, which was
Big
huge.
old house.
To us,
Big
that was
old
huge. We
house.
went from 400 square feet to 3,200?
That's about right.
3,200? Huge upsize.
Yeah.
And we fixed it up. It was completely run down. We got in there before we brought anybody in and repaired so much, painted, hung new sheetrock.
It was old. It was an
It was
old
in
house.
bad shape. And we had over 22 people over the course of our time right there live with us in that place. We would have as many as 5 at a time living with us. Loved it. We're teaching them English, taking them sightseeing, preaching the gospel to them.
They loved the kids.
But then in
They
addition to
loved the
that, I
kids.
began running a Wish International. It was an exchange program. And so we would bring in groups of 22 girls at a time and guys too. First group was all girls. And we would find American families to
Host
host
families.
all the students. I would hire translators. We'd use our church building as the school, church buses to bus everybody.
Do sightseeing.
Tourism in the afternoon, got the town involved, the paper, the different stores were providing different meals and parties, and it was great. We had
was great.
translators at church to preach the gospel, and best time of our life. We had so much fun, raised the kids right there in the middle of it, and also in the middle of that, started a store that was a gift store for the community in Dallas, Oregon. And so that's how we were putting him through school.
It was called the No Room.
Yeah, I would tell the kids, you can't go in the no-no room. And I'd make all these gift baskets and deliver it to the garages and the feed stores. And I'd walk around with the kids in these baskets. I'd show up on Valentine's Day and different things. And anyway, that's how we got through school. And then Toshiko, one of our dear friends, she moved with us to Texas.
Yeah, there was two kids, Toshiko and Hiroki, and they
got married.
They
We
ended
got
up
to-
getting married. They invited us back to Japan.
Yeah.
We were the witnesses.
We
And,
got to see several come to the
yeah.
Lord.
And it was really cute because they Hiroki would say, "I want to have." We only had 3 kids at the time. Andrew came much later, but he was like, "I want to have 3 kids just like you because it's a great environment." And
So they have 3 kids.
so they have 3 kids today.
And
Yeah.
so we've always hosted people. When we moved to Plano, it wasn't conducive to having a lot of people. We ended up deciding to move out into the country where we could have people again.
Toshiko actually moved with us. She extended her visa, and I mean, she was
Yeah.
like
She was
a
like a
daughter.
daughter
She's
to
like a
us.
daughter, and she was like, "Oh, please let me come with you."
Yeah.
So then the McKinney house, we got it as a little 1,800 square foot, 1,850 square foot house, and built on and built on and built on and built on to continue accommodating people. Moved our grandparents in to live there. The Yates lived with us there. So many people lived with us there as well.
Right.
Constantly had people. And what we didn't tell you is that in 1988, the Lord filled our hearts with vision for communities and a place that would house just such kingdom life in a very home setting
Yeah.
that would revolutionize the community around, where everybody that was there acted missionally and was about community revitalization, a place that invited people from outside in to come get healthy, a place that used extreme hospitality and community service and music to disciple and preach the gospel.
And all of that will be here.
We've been doing it all this time,
Yeah.
but we knew it was the season for it. Emerging Sound
Yeah.
is part of that, just in
Yeah.
a very real way. Jade Lundgren, my dear sweet friend, helped me start up Emerging Sound, and all of the people in songs help host it, and others from the outside, Dustin Smith, Benji Cowart, Lauren Daigle even. They've helped just Travis Ryan raise it from the ground up. All the people in songs, folks, and you'll meet them. That's been an amazing community.
Yeah.
Darrin believed we were supposed to start in a formal way. It's basically what we've always done, but actually brand it. So we let the parents, everybody know that we were going to do a formal internship program in our house in Texas. He believed we were to start it there. And in the same way that we took that little 400 square foot house and filled it to the brim and kind of forced God to give us a bigger place, kind of did the
We
same
did the same
thing.
thing in Texas.
Yes.
We took that house and
So we were full.
filled it.
And it was after the Emerging Sound we really felt
This year.
like this year
Yeah.
that we just needed to go on the search. We needed to get mobile. Jennie had been doing research on different properties, but we still didn't know
Yeah.
exactly where. We just know that we needed to get mobile.
Tell us about the road trip that God took you on, which
So-
ultimately
Well,
Let us hear.
This past Emerging Sound, crazy move of God, lights out, incredible. Everything the Lord's been promising, He marked it with His presence in a way that He had previous enormous moves in our life. And He had let us know that it would be time when we saw Him move that way again. We did. And so we finished Emerging Sound. You were there.
Yes.
And we get home, and all that week kept feeling like we needed to get on the road because the window was closing to be able to travel. And kept procrastinating because I really wanted to get ahead of the curve for 2018 2017
Yeah.
Emerging Sound. And so I procrastinated all that week. And here we are Monday. We kept saying, we've got to get on the road. Here we are Monday, and the Lord woke me up so loud in my ears. I actually required Him to shout. I feel bad about it still. But He woke me up with Atlanta. And so I grabbed my phone and looked on my Southwest app, and lo and behold, I got 2 tickets for $14, was it?
Something crazy.
Nuts.
Wow.
I still think it was a mistake on their part or something, but I got 2 tickets for $14. So he asked me why Atlanta and said, why not Nashville or we need to go to New York. Why not New York? So I checked out both of those to see if maybe tickets were just crazy on sale. Nope. Those tickets were the price that they were supposed to be. So
Atlanta was it.
Atlanta was it. We jumped in the car, went to the airport, got on the plane, flew to Atlanta. on the tarmac, rented a car, got into the parking garage. And then we're sitting there
We
like,
prayed.
what do we do next?
Where did we go?
So we prayed right there in the parking garage, pulled out my app, loopnet.com, and started following the little balls that I had pinned. Everything that I had found was a total bust. Realized that within about 2 places. And so then just started pulling up what was close to us, filtered heavily down to special purpose buildings that we were looking for that would be a big enough home, because I knew houses would not be big enough. And the Lord brought us to 5 places.
Several different properties that were.
Like the very
were
first one he
really
actually
good.
led us to, it was like, this is perfect. We'll take this one. It's great. And he said, you can have it if you want it, but why don't you go to the next one? And each time he did that, he gave us 5 locations, all of which he would have given us. Each time he said, why don't you go to the next one? And when I say amazing, I mean amazing. We almost bought John Hancock's house
Wow.
in Fincastle, Virginia, which is a darling little town. We could have bought quite a few amazing places. In a church on a square, beautiful historic church. But even there, and after meeting the town, we met the town, lovely place. You should visit it. It's fantastic. Still felt like the Lord said, but why don't you go to the next one? So we drive here, and Darrin's on the phone with work, and I come on in to look, and it was right down that hallway, right there. I walk in the door, and the strangest thing happened. I've never experienced anything like it. I felt like I'd walked into my own surprise party.
Wow.
It was, I've never been so aware. One other time in my life. It was at the IWI in 2004, I think, maybe 5. Lyndall Cooley and Carrie Job were up on the platform. And I became aware of the great cloud of witnesses. That's the only time up until that moment right back there.
Right back there.
And I felt like the great cloud of witnesses was watching on. And I had stepped into what the Lord had planned for me since 1988. Felt it so strong. And I just stood there for the longest time. Lord, is this it? But Darrin wasn't by my side. He was on the phone, so I needed to wait and see if he had the same sense of the place. But this was it. I knew the minute I stepped across that threshold and I said yes to the assignment before we knew a thing about the town, the house. We didn't research the town. I knew nothing about it. We didn't come here on purpose. It was kind of an accident. Didn't even realize we'd crossed over into Indiana. Never in a million years thought we would be in Indiana. That is the furthest. I've never even said Indiana out of my mouth, except maybe when I was studying the states in school. Had never heard of. I just knew nothing. So we had zoomed so far in on the map that I didn't realize we had crossed.
Yeah.
And so I said yes to the Lord. It was already my house. I could see all of our people here. I could see all of People and Songs here. I could see all of Emerging Sound here. I could see them. And so I've learned over the years, you take God at his word. And when he gives you vision, it's the same thing as hearing him. He filled my eyes. I've learned over the years to act on that. So I actually called, well, by this time he had seen it, but I actually called all of them and told them I had found the place for our retreat this year and invited them to fly into Chicago and told them we would be having a retreat in the Midwest and to buy their
All
tickets.
of your People and Songs.
All of them.
Yeah.
And they did. They began buying their tickets. I didn't tell them we were looking at a house. I didn't tell them. So my heart's desire was that they'd walk in and find a surprise.
Yeah.
Anyway, I blew right past your part.
That's okay. That's all right.
So tell them about how you.
I mean, I didn't have quite the experience like that, but I knew that it was very special, and just looking at the place, and looking at Jennie's reaction, and It's very special.
Yeah.
And it was a yes in my heart as well. Yeah. It was an easy decision to make.
And I think we'll tour the place later and talk about the history and all
Yeah.
of that. But clearly it was the place God had for you.
Yeah, and it's about the biggest jump. It's like jumping from the 450 square foot house to the 3,200 square foot house.
Mm-hmm.
Jumping from our house in Texas to this is probably, this is a big house.
Mm-hmm.
It was built in 1888 by a woman named Ruth Saban. And we can tell you more of the history as we walk around. But
Yeah.
what I love so much is that he likes to piddle with his hands. Can I say it that way? He likes to kinesthetically he's
Sure.
always fixing stuff and tearing things apart and putting it back together. He's an engineer. And so it's been fun watching him in this house. He's kind of loved fixing every little thing he has found. So
Yeah. It's a bit like working on an old Chevy pickup. So I really picked it up.
we'll show you his pickup too.
Yes.
He has an old 57 Chevy pickup.
64.
Huh?
64.
What did I say? 57?
Mhm.
Oh, that was the tractor. 64.
Clearly this house is going to be filled with music, though, for a long, long time forward. Tell us about that first songwriters retreat here.
Oh, it was everything I hoped. It was everything I expected, and as always, so much more.
Mhm.
They had a blast, and actually, I want them to get to tell you about it. You're going to get to have all of them here this week, and so
Yeah.
that'd be fun to ask them what their first impressions were. But
I will.
it was, it's a joy to have I feel like they're all my kids.
Mhm.
And also my siblings, and also my teachers and my friends. So to have the halls ringing with their sounds and this much life is a dream come true
Mhm.
in every possible way. In every possible way.
Wow. So to wrap up this part, I mean, how would you just kind of put it all in a capsule, just about what God has done in
He's
your
a
life?
promise keeper.
Hmm.
He's a man of his word. He's not a tease. He doesn't lead you to a dead end. Romans 5:5 says, hope does not disappoint. You can take his word to the bank. And he's not a means to an end either. He's your father and the lover of your soul. And if you'll just take him by the hand and trust that his ways are perfect, and trust that he has better plans for you than you could ever imagine, and then just enjoy him.
Mhm.
If you will spend your life not about the journey, not about the end goal, but just with him.
Mhm.
His word's true. It works. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. And I want to get to that. If you will do the first two things, the last thing won't even matter. And what Darrin can tell you and everyone else is that I had died to the other stuff.
Mhm.
So thoroughly died to the other stuff. He brought me to he'd become really all I want and all I need. And that is still the case.
Hmm.
I wanted to be a good steward before him, and I wanted to be a good daughter. And he who is faithful with little will be given much. This is a stewardship. This isn't our house. This is a kingdom embassy. I don't know what else to call it. It's a kingdom refuge.
Wow.
It's not ours.
Mhm.
It belongs to him. And it's our good privilege to get to steward it. And we're all just stewards and daughters and sons and co-heirs.
Amazing. Jennie and Darrin, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Thanks.
Just tremendous. Thanks for watching. Take care.